everyone, welcome to today's ArtStop. I'm Lucy Eron, a museum educator, and today we're going to be discussing this lovely work. This is by Marie-Guillemine Benoist. It's called Portrait of a Lady from circa 1799. And I chose to discuss this work because first of all, it's by a woman artist, which I've been taking an interest in researching women artists in our collection, and also because there's a really interesting history of this work in terms of attributions and how it's gone through actually several different attributions. So first it was attributed to Jacques-Louis David, the famous French neoclassical painter. And then there was some doubt cast on that. It was attributed to the school of David, and finally to Marie-Guillemine Benoist, who was actually one of David's pupils. And if you're not familiar with Neoclassicism, this is a neoclassical work. Neoclassicism is a movement and a style that took place in France about the time of the French Revolution. So this is about 18th century, late 18th century. And there's a revival in an interest in classical themes, subjects. And that is partly due to the fact that there were some major excavations taking place in the 18th century of sites, archaeological sites like Herculaneum, which is one outside of Naples in Italy, and Pompeii. And these sites were discovered, and these were sites that were buried under the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79, miraculously preserved. So there's all of a sudden this interest in everything classical. So it's kind of a new fanaticism for anything classical, and as the saying goes, artists wanted to portray the glory that was Rome and the grandeur that was Greece. Okay, so ancient Rome and ancient Greece. And so there's a focus on the morals and values that were upheld by the ancient civilizations, and you can see that in art, as well as the style of dress and a focus on beauty. And so these are themes that neoclassical artists revived. And it's partly in response to the frivolous, what was seen as frivolous style of the Rococo and Romanticism, which was happening earlier. So David was the leader of this movement. He was a very well-known painter. And he also painted with Napoleon Bonaparte's favored painter. Especially after he painted Napoleon crossing the Alps, and he inscribed on rock below Napoleon's name, as well as some of the Roman emperors, so Hannibal as well. So that elevated Napoleon to that legacy of the past. And so Napoleon wanted to keep this classical thing going on as well, into the French Revolution and beyond. So this painting, as I said, started out as attributed to David, but then there was some doubt that began to be raised by that. And starting in about 1971, I was looking through some letters in our archives, and the curator at the time, Martin Peterson, wrote about his doubts, and he said that the decorative design around the mantle here in this model was disturbing some scholars who believed David would not have introduced such a frivolous element. So already there's some doubt as to its attribution. And then this continues. So then in 1972, Robert Rosenblum, a scholar from NYU, wrote to us, and quote, intuition he had that it's by a woman artist. So he intuited correctly. But it wouldn't be for many more years until that was actually reattributed to Benoist. And then also, there is another letter that I found that reinforced this idea, that said that the idea that it may be by a woman artist is a very sensitive one and seems plausible to me. Okay, so that was, again, all of these scholars commenting on letters that the curators had sent out in order to think about its reattribution. And then there became a description of this painting from the 1799 Salon in Paris. in which Benoist displayed supposedly this work, and it's compatible with a description, and that description of a reviewer, a critic, wrote of this woman wrapped in a shawl that we're looking at. She is painted to overshadow any society in which she has been placed. Okay, so it's very similar to this in terms of the description. And the style looks very similar to what Benoist would have painted. Okay, the way that she models this young lady, the definition in the face, the wide-set eyes, the rosy cheeks, attention to these details was pretty characteristic of Benoist's work. And I have a couple images here I want to show you, especially of her self-portrait that she painted in 1799. You can see some of the similarities there in the style. This is Benoist's self-portrait. Okay, and also similarities in pose. So you see that sort of three-quarter pose with looking over the shoulder. Okay, so interesting similarities there. But David was, again, a very big influence on Benoist, and as well as Benoist's first teacher, who was Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun, who also had kind of similarities in depicting these female types. The blue ribbon and the harmonious color scheme may have been influences of this other teacher of hers, who also was kind of in this school of David. But Benoist was actually a very important and well-known painter for her time. So she was actually well recognized and did achieve success. And she exhibited at the Salon. And again, this was kind of atypical for female artists at the time. Okay, so, but you know, she was, again, a well-known artist. And she even painted commissions for Napoleon. And here is one of her commissions for Napoleon's sister. Okay, so she was kind of awarded the honor of painting Napoleon's sister there, a very lovely portrait, full length. She was very good at portraying women in these long robes. And there has been some critique about her ability to portray anatomy if it's not upper body, because the women's legs were always covered. So there was one portrait she did in particular, which she depicts a male with crossed legs wearing tights, and it has been criticized that the legs looked flaccid and uncharacteristic of actual anatomy. So this subject is just Portrait of a Lady, but it was previously titled, when it was attributed to David, Portrait of Madame Tallien. And Madame Tallien was a real person, a famous figure of the French Revolution. She was an important socialite, an aristocrat, had a kind of scandalous background, a lot of affairs, but she also was very politically active and worked to free people from prison who were thrown into prison in the French Revolution, going to be guillotined. So she supposedly saved a lot of lives with her political influence. She was a very popular character to portray in French neoclassical painting. So originally, that was the title of this painting. She, however, is now just Portrait of a Lady, because this style of fashion was actually pretty widespread. Okay, so, but here is another portrait of Madame Tallien right there. So you can see similarities in dress. So she always wore the characteristic Greek toga robes, and this was the popular style with the high waist, the thin material. She had similar facial features, similar hairstyle. Okay. And there's a couple more here. Here's another one by Duvivier of Madame Tallien. Okay, so you can see why it would have been attributed as Madame Tallien. And one more there. Okay. But the facial features are slightly different. So, again, it's hard to exactly say that it does not look like her. But there was some doubt as to whether it really is Madame Tallien, and I think there was a desire for it to be a portrait of somebody well-known rather than just an anonymous portrait of a lady. So a previous art dealer may have assigned it as Madame Tallien. But again, this was a very prolific style. The high-waisted dress, the toga, this white muslin that was diaphanous, so very see-through. And Madame Tallien, as well as many other of these ladies of French society, would wear this style, and they'd wear it out, and they kind of liked the freedom that it brought to them, and it was a symbol almost of the revolution and of freedom. And Madame Tallien supposedly wore her white gown there to the opera, and it was very scandalous because it was so see-through and she didn't wear any undergarments. And she would hang out with Josephine Bonaparte. So Josephine, she actually introduced Josephine to Napoleon, according to my research. And they would go out in these white gowns, and they would even soak them in perfume to make them cling a little bit more to their form. So this was kind of the new style of the time, and also the cropped hair. So it was the prisoner look. So they wanted to mimic the look of prisoners, cut their hair, and there are portraits out there of the women with their cut hair actually resting in their laps from taking on these new hairstyles. Josephine Bonaparte also, there's a famously how she died was of pneumonia, and she caught a cold while she was out walking in one of these very thin gowns. And I don't know if she had soaked it at that time or it was a cold day, but it was kind of a thing to be seen in one of those gowns. And artists as well, so artists portraying women or models in these types of clothing also influenced the style. So David had a lot to do with that, his models in this sort of fashion that was revived from classical times. And that also spread to England. So a lot of times you would see, you'll see sitters in works by artists such as Gainsborough, wearing these kind of long, high-waisted gowns. So this was, again, just very stylish at the time. So we don't know if it is Madame Tallien, but unfortunately, when the French visited here in 1987, thinking that it was Madame Tallien, the Comtesse de Marie de Bar here posed by what she thought was her great-aunt by David. So unfortunately, we don't know for sure whether that was indeed her great-aunt, but you can see her there next to our work. At the time, it was attributed as Madame Tallien. And unfortunately, they also used flash, which would have been strictly prohibited, of course, because you can see the big glare there, unable to make out the definition. There is no reason why Benoist would not have painted a figure such as Madame Tallien, because she was interested in portraying women and these kind of strong, interesting women. And one of the works that she's most famous for, which I'll pull up here for you, is this portrait right here, Portrait of a Negress, and it is in the Louvre. And this is perhaps her most widely recognized work because of its strength, and also the unusual depiction here of a black female. Okay. But a very powerful gaze and a very powerful confrontation here in her portrait. And so she was known for portraying these slightly interesting females. And she also portrayed the allegory of virtue and vice in a different way than was originally commonly portrayed. So instead of vice being a female, she portrays the figure of vice as a male. So she switches the roles. So, again, she could have painted this interesting woman, Madame Tallien, or it could just be another woman at the time. But either way, I think we're very fortunate to have a work by Benoist in our collection, and recognizing her contributions to Neoclassicism and the fact that she was a very important painter at the time. So thank you so much for coming on the ArtStop, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you may have them. And one more thing I want to add is that John Marchiari is working on a European art catalog, and I believe he's going to be discussing this work. So there will be more information, hopefully, about the reattributions and how that was discovered. So thank you.
Thank you.